In the previous lecture, we saw one example of inference to the best explanation, but it might help to go through just one more. I told you that detectives often use inference to the best explanation to figure out who committed the crime. One really neat example of this kind of argument was provided by some students in the first offering of this course. Just check out the video that they made.
I think I'm gonna go for a run. Philippa and Mackenzie are sleeping. Work up an appetite. I might dig into some of those cookies later. That was a good run. I think I'm gonna have some cookies. What? Oh man, that was a brand new dish. The dish broke, and I was wondering if you heard anything or if you had anything to do with it.
No, I just woke up.
You didn't hear? Huh. I wonder how this could have happened. You didn't feel any earthquake, did you, or something? Late.
Well, I suggest that perhaps it was Timmy.
Timmy. You know, come to think of it, I'm looking at this counter, and I'm seeing that dumb cat's hair. I think we found our answer.
Mm-hmm. Timmy did it.
Philippa?
Timmy.
Timmy, what do you have to say for yourself?
Meow.
Loved that video, didn't you? Great production values. He's ready for Hollywood. The actors, Emmys. Oh man. I wonder if he hired professionals. And the argument was good too. First of all, it was really clear. I mean, you know exactly why they think Timmy did it. Its structure was really good. You start with a phenomenon that needs to be explained, namely the dish was broken on the floor. And you look for alternative explanations, and you compare those different explanations, and the best explanation is that Timmy did it. Okay, so what are the competing explanations? Well, Mackenzie might have done it, but she denied it. She wouldn't lie to her parents. She looked so innocent, at least I thought so. We'll see whether other people agree. And the other possibility is an earthquake, but nobody felt an earthquake, and they probably would have felt an earthquake, so that's no good. Maybe Philippa did it. Wait a minute. I don't know if you noticed in that little box, Philippa sleeps like a log. And he got back at 7:45. That's when the dish was broken. She didn't come down till 9:45. And if she's sleeping like a log, how could she have done it? So we've got different hypotheses that are being considered, and he's looking for the best one. So what makes it best is not just that those other hypotheses have things that rule them out, but also that this hypothesis has a lot of positive support for it. One thing is nice is that he found the hair on the counter. That was crucial, because now the hypothesis that Timmy did it explains not just the dish, but also the hair on the counter. And that's a sign of a good explanation, that it explains not just the particular things, but it's powerful and broad. It applies to other things as well and explains other phenomenon that need to be explained. So overall, I think there's pretty good reason to think that Timmy did it. And the kicker that proves it all is that the cat confessed. You heard it yourself. The cat said, meow. Of course, the argument could be stronger because inductive strength comes in degrees. But the fact that it could be stronger doesn't mean it's no good. You can get a pretty good reason by ruling out the most plausible hypotheses, even if there are a few that you didn't quite get to in presenting your argument. And sure enough, in the discussion forums, some students pointed out weaknesses which amounted to looking at these different hypotheses as possible explanations of the data. A lot of students seem to suspect Mackenzie. Here's one of them. Joe writes, "Hi, Kevin. While watching the interrogation of Mackenzie, I got the feeling she was hiding something. She had means, motive, and opportunity. I think in order to add to the strength of the inductive argument that she's innocent, she should volunteer for a lie detector test." And then he goes on, "I suspect that Timmy was framed. Considering how minorities and the poor are treated in the justice system, I recommend that he remain silent until he secures representation." Well, I don't know about the second half of that, but with regard to Mackenzie, there's an interesting point to notice here. Joe doesn't know Mackenzie, and he doesn't trust her, thinks she looks suspicious. But Kevin, he knows Mackenzie. He lives with her. He spent a lot of time with her. And he trusts her. So we have a nice example of how an inductive argument might be strong for one person and not for the other person. Because Kevin has this background information that Mackenzie's trustworthy, whereas Joe doesn't have that background information. So the argument that Kevin gave in the very short form in which it occurred might be good enough for him because of his background knowledge about Mackenzie's trustworthiness, whereas it's not good enough for Joe because Joe doesn't have that background knowledge. And that's just a fact about inductive arguments in general, that they might be strong for some people and not so strong for other people. And we could make the argument even stronger by looking at other explanations. So, what about Philippa? Well, she sleeps like a log, but maybe she was sleepwalking and knocked the cookies over when she was sleepwalking. What about Kevin himself? How come he's getting off the hook? Maybe he did it when he came back from running because he had sweat in his eyes and didn't notice it and didn't hear the plate drop because he was so tired. Maybe there was a burglar who came in, and while they were stealing things, they knocked the cookies over, and that made noise, and so they got scared and ran away. Maybe it was Santa Claus. He has been known to eat cookies that are left out on the counter for him. Maybe it was ghosts. There's all kinds of possible explanations, and you could drive yourself crazy trying to rule out every possible explanation. So at a certain point, you have to decide, when is the argument strong enough? And that depends on what you're going to do with it. Now, I've said I think this is a good argument. I think Timmy did it. The confession really is the kicker. But I'm not ready to give Timmy capital punishment. I'm not ready to banish Timmy from the house. There's some steps that would just be too harsh in response to this amount of evidence. However, I do think that the evidence is strong enough that we can guide our action with it, at least in ways that don't have a lot of cost. So, for example, my suggestion to Kevin and his entire family is, don't put the cookies on the edge of the counter. I mean, if Timmy's going to knock them off and you don't want them knocked off, you got to accept some responsibility yourself. And this argument can be good enough to guide our action about where to put the cookies on the counter, when to leave them out and when not to leave them out, even if it's not good enough to justify capital punishment. So one thing that we need to think about in assessing not just how strong an argument it is, but whether it's strong enough, is what are we going to do with it? And what are the costs incurred if we're wrong?